Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. Our guest today is creative entrepreneur Holley Murchison. I met Holley through some friends in New York who connected us on the hip hop motivation scene, and it's been awesome to see what Holley has done with her hip hop motivational tour, the Hall Pass tour in schools, and all the cool projects she's working on now that she'll share with you in the interview. Stick around after our conversation for the after show when Ivy and I will share our biggest takeaways.
Here we go.
Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Blake Brandis.
And I'm Ivy LeClaire.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Holley Murchison. As an entrepreneur and communication strategist, Holley uses her passions for the arts, education, and global culture to push the envelope. In 2011, Holley co-founded the Hall Pass Tour, a collective collaborating with urban and rural schools to produce concerts celebrating the dreams and leadership of young people to spark school-wide change. Holley is also the CEO of Oratory Glory, a communication agency and speaker collective. Oratory Glory trains emerging leaders in arts, education, finance, and technology sectors, catalyzing diversity through the amplification of marginalized voices. Holley, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it's exciting to be here with you in Zoo Labs. Rocking out in Oakland. We always love when we can connect in person. So we'd love to hear more about what you're up to at the moment and why you're so passionate about it.
Absolutely. You got me super giddy now. I'm just here super cheesy right now. So there are a few things that I'm up to, and I think they all tie into some of the passions that you read. And I say more than anything else, I'm passionate about, one, humanizing the way the world communicates, and two, seeing people win. I get really, really excited about seeing people activated to do what they love with love. And so all of my work right now is focused on doing those things. So on one end with Hall Pass Tour, where we are now, is redefining the model of what we're doing to package it in a way where artists can be socially responsible in the way they engage with young people and the way they engage with the world. Because quite frankly, music is one of the keys to change in the world. Artists are the most influential people that we have in our society right now. So that's one thing we're working on, rebuilding and redefining the 2.0 version of Hall Pass Tour. And two, I'm CEO and founder of Oratory Glory. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the story of how that all started. But with Oratory Glory right now, we're growing into an agency and speaker collective that, one, offers a range of tools and events that inspire better communication. So it's something I'm super passionate about, because I think just as a society, we're getting dangerously far away from honoring the value of just heart-to-heart communication. And when you think about it, they're not skills that we learn in school. If we're lucky, they're skills we learn at a job that really cares about developing humans in a meaningful way. And so our work is really centered around how do we make sure people are equipped to forward their ideas and their thoughts and move their teams forward with those communication skills. So right now, our big focus is on a book that we're putting out next year called Tell Me About Yourself. And it's an action guide for how to make powerful introductions. I think with communication in general, it starts with knowing who you are, right? It's like every event you go to, every networking thing, it's like, what do you do? What are you up to? Tell me about yourself. And in an era as millennials where we've worn 17 different hats, sometimes it's really challenging to be like, well, I can't reduce what I do down to one sentence, So we're really excited about putting a book out that introduces a process for how to navigate those conversations and really come out on the right side of how you want to move your relationships forward. So yeah, two of the big things that we're doing right now: growing a company and growing a company.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. So when you were starting out with Hall Pass Tour, did you ever think that this path would take you on the direction it's taken you?
No, and I've always just followed my heart in the work and trusted that it would lead me into the spaces that I was supposed to go. And I never knew where Hall Pass Tour would lead. Mm-hmm. I did know, though, that I wasn't happy working a 9-to-5. I didn't see myself living a life where I was clocking into a clock, checking into a clock, or those things didn't feel good. And so the resistance of those things catapulted me into entrepreneurship. So did I know? No. Am I very happy about it? Yes, because Hall Pass Tour led to teaching public speaking workshops, which led to starting Oratory Glory. So,
Can you give people a little sense of what Hall Pass Tour is like? Because
sure.
When I first found out about it, as someone who's into hip-hop motivational work, I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's also social impact focused in addition to music focused. So
absolutely. So the Hall Pass Tour essentially uses music as the igniter. There's three languages that we all speak: food, music, and education. Those are, no matter where we're from, what barriers, those are the things that unite us. And so the intent with Hall Pass Tour was, what if we went to schools and produced a concert themed around getting students excited about carving out their own learning path? And we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, right? That sounds good to adults. We're like, yeah, get them excited about the learning paths. And it's like, okay, but how do you get a student excited about that? And we're like, through music. And so what we started doing was going to schools, and we have a headlining MC and a headlining singer. And through the sharing of their stories of their craft and what they studied in college, and like how it led them to pursuing independent music careers, and how they were able to carve out their own learning to be able to arrive at that place where we're like, oh, we can share that story. And also we need to create space for students to share their stories too. So with the tour, we go in, we have a headlining MC and the singer who perform. Students plan the concert. So we created a program where we have a student ambassador team learn the ins and outs of what it takes to build a concert. And through the process, they get to learn what their dreams and passions are and really explore them in a meaningful way. And that student ambassador team is responsible for hosting a audition where students can audition to be the opening acts for the concert. So it's a student-led, student-run concert experience. And then the entire Hall Pass Tour team comes in to produce this, to support them in producing this big show. We hold the concerts after school because we were like, we could do it during school and that's great, but the message stays contained in this space. And it's like, well, if we do it in the evenings after parents get off work, then the whole community can come in and see what their students are capable of, and not just see, but support them in like seeing that through. And that stemmed from a place of like, I grew up in the 80s in the crack era in Harlem, and community was such a big thing. If my mom wasn't around, best believe there was another mom who would check me if I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. I spent a lot of time at the library. So the community was like my center, and everyone was there checking for me, making sure I was on the right track. And that was the intent with Hall Pass Tour. Create a space where we can use music to drive students to want to control their learning experiences, do that in a way that ties into what their dreams are.
How have you seen students transform through that program?
Wow. I think in a number of ways. I remember most vividly, the first concert we did was at a school in Harlem called Global Tech Prep. And I was working at the school with an organization called Citizen Schools. And I approached my principal, like, we're launching this idea. Can we do a concert at the school? And she was like, sure. And when we held auditions for student opening acts, like 50 kids showed up. And they were students who were super shy. There were some students who were like, students who you didn't expect to show up and audition for a concert. And we had one student, Joey, who is like normally a shy kid, very eclectic, and students didn't always get him, but he was really unapologetically himself. He just seemed to need like the right opportunity to show the world. And we selected him as co-host, and he knocked it out of the park. And the way students responded to him after he co-hosted the concert was like, people were like, wow, Joey, you were really good. You can see him getting complimented, wow. But you can see a shift in like just his posture alone. He was like, yeah, like I did that. I was able to own that moment. So just seeing a student own his or her voice on a stage is like really transformational to see, oh, I can stand before an audience and speak my truth and like hold space. So that was just like one of a number of transformations we've seen from 20,000 students we engaged with over 3 years on the road.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
It's been a wild journey in a lot of really cool ways. And those are some of the best moments of my life on the road with Hall Pass Tour.
Yeah, I just love that I'm getting to see you literally stop and reflect at the awesomeness of your journey, because it's like I'm sensing a little bit of surprise, like, oh my gosh, like I can't not believe that this happened and it's led me to this place.
I think sometimes we're so in the work, we don't take a minute to step out and look at like where our work has taken us and how much we've learned from the people we've had the privilege of working with. And so for me, when I reflect on Hall Pass, so I'm like, that was a lot of fun. And it reminds me that like my work can be fun. And how do I bring that element of fun to all of the work I'm doing? And it's definitely something I carry into what we're up to at Oratory Glory now. So
yeah, so
exciting.
Maybe would you share with us a little bit about that transition into
I think it's a good segue.
It's so interesting because it's just been a following of this path. So with Hall Pass Tour, we did about 20 concerts. We started with 5 concerts in New York City, and then we traveled to like 11 states across the country, just working with different schools, some colleges, wider audiences. And then bootstrapping is hard, yo. And we picked the most expensive possible product to produce in the end. And I use product in air quotes because our products are services that serve people. Concerts are expensive to produce. And when you're bringing concerts to a community or an environment that normally wouldn't have the resources to fund a concert, you're like, well, we'll figure out how to fund it for you. And so we were literally like, yo, we don't have to get paid. Let's just go rock this concert. And then it was like, skirt. Actually, we gotta eat. We need to figure out a way to one, do this powerfully and make it useful and able to sustain the test of time. And two, we have a little more learning and growing to do to figure out how to do that. So my business partner, Janelle, went on to the Harvard Graduate School of Education to learn more about the theory. And we were just practical people. We were like, we have an idea, we're scrappy, let's figure it out. We're like doers. And she went to grad school and I moved to California. So I moved to Oakland from New York City about 3 years ago. This month is actually my Caliversary month.
Nice.
And I left New York because I felt like I needed more space to grow in a way that wasn't so competitive. And the pace in New York is a culture that's like, yo, we work, get it done, 365, like, get out there. And I just found myself like, yo, I'm in this rat race. I don't even know why I'm racing right now. I'm like, we are all after so many different things. And it's like, it's so easy to get caught up in that. So I moved to the Bay to expand what I was doing with Oratory Glory. And Oratory Glory started because when we had our concerts, I was our concert host, and I'm still our concert host. And I was coaching the students who were on stage on how to like present themselves, how to carve out their message for when they talked about what they're passionate about. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the process of like no one needs to find their voice. Like, where your voice is. It's a matter of like owning it. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So a couple of my friends went to a class. Actually, that's not true. I dragged my friends to a class called How to Teach a Skillshare class. And at the time, Skillshare, for those who aren't familiar, is a learning platform where you can essentially learn anything from anyone. And originally, Skillshare was local, so you could teach a local class anywhere. And I was like, yo, let's go learn how to do this and teach a class. And my friends are going around, and I'm like, what are you going to teach? One of my homegirls was like, HR. And I was like, what do I teach? And they were like, you should teach public speaking. And I was like, oh, yeah. It was like another one of those reflective moments. And I thought back, like every position I've ever held, and I've like coached at camps. I've been like a camp director, been an education associate. I've been a project resource manager at a contracting firm. I've worked at an accounting firm. I've done all of these different jobs across leadership roles that always required me to control the flow of communication and make sure everyone was understood. And I didn't think I really looked at it as a gift. I looked at it as a necessity. Until my friend was like, teach public speaking. I was like, oh yeah, I could definitely do that. I studied television and radio in college. So I started teaching a workshop called Cool as a Cucumber, How to Master Public Speaking. It was like $10. I invited like a bunch of my homies. That was May 17th, 2011. And wow.
I was like taking a step back.
Was it 2011? It was either 2011 or 2013. I'll fact check and get back to you. But that was like the first domino. And that wasn't Oratory Glory then. It was Holley teaching public speaking workshops until someone was like, can you come teach this at my company? And I was like, yeah, I can suggest your company. Let's do this. And then someone was like, can you coach me? I'm like, yeah, I can coach you. And then one day I was just like, this is a business. And so I continued doing that. And I ended up coaching at companies like Spotify and the Startup Institute. And when I moved to the Bay, I was like, I'm moving here to expand what Oratory Glory can become. And I jokingly started telling people when they signed up for workshops, like, get aboard the Oratory Glory train. And I was saying it jokingly at first, and that became the name of the company. And so here we are now. And before it was like, I'll teach anybody who wants to get better at public speaking. And then I realized, it's more than public speaking. Everything we do is public speaking. And it was like, it's really about communication. And how do you communicate with authenticity and compassion and finesse to actually forward the work that you're doing? All of the voices that we don't hear from enough. So the people at the margins, how do we give them the skills to, not even give them, how do we teach the skills to bring those voices at the margins to the center to really create a shift? Once that clicked, I was like, okay, let's get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a story around when that view that you have around communication and the importance of communication, when that passion really solidified and was like a defining moment, like, okay, this is really why I'm passionate about this?
You know what's funny? When I look back, it's always been something I was passionate about. I just didn't define it. Like, no one's walking around like, I love me some communication. Like, like it's not one of those things. And I think it was really understanding and connectedness. And I think I always loved to be in a space where people felt connected and people felt understood. And when you get to the heart of that, it's communication. Most of the breakdowns that happen at work, most of the breakdowns that happen in our relationships are because of some type of miscommunication of some sort. Someone didn't feel understood or heard or appreciated. And in all of my conversations as I was teaching, I realized like these transformational things that were happening for people when they were like, I am actually, this is my idea and I'm proud of my idea. And just seeing people walk in from the beginning of a workshop to the end of a workshop, like, oh, I have practical skills to do this and to slay it in my next meeting and to tell my boss I'm ready for a raise and to speak up in that like Friday meeting when someone's like, do you have any new ideas you want to share? So seeing that repeatedly, the fear, the misunderstanding, and then the transformation through the workshops and just repeatedly hearing folks say it was something they struggled with, I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was it's kind of naive. Like, I didn't realize how big of a challenge it was for people until I was so deep in it. And I think for me, I grew up in a space where I was always thrusted into a space where I had to learn how to communicate well. And I grew up really shy and I was always an introvert. And so I had a lot of time to absorb from like being the fly on the wall. So I didn't realize how much I was processing and learning about human dynamics and nonverbal communication and what really gets to people's hearts. I feel excited talking about it right now. So I think just a reflection of just like thinking about conversations I'd had and thinking about how I grew up and just the importance of how much the power of communication can just shift everything.
Yeah, and seeing that the way that communication and effective communication can empower people, I imagine plays into sort of the second passion that you identified at the beginning, which was seeing people win. It's supporting them and helping them win.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally.
The most frustrating thing is like to have an idea and you know it's good. And you're like, but I don't have the right words for it. And it's like, wow. We can help you with that. Insert like cheesy grin. Like.
So when did you step into your own voice? I mean, you mentioned it's not about really finding your voice as much as owning your voice. And growing up as an introvert, what was that process like for you?
That's a great question. It was a long process. And I think it's still something that I'm processing. I think basketball helped a ton in being on the debate team. And those are like my earliest moments of owning my voice. We could take it back even earlier to like 4th grade, but we won't go that far back. But in junior high school, I had an amazing, our mock trial coach, his name is Miss Glenkoff. And through the mock trial team, I learned argumentation and debate. And I was like, oh, this is great. I was like a nerd jock. So I was captain of my basketball team and captain of my debate team. And so I think those were the spaces where I had to own my voice because I knew people were relying on me too. On the basketball court, it was like, we're down by a few points. How do I rally my team to get their heads back in the game? How do I rally myself? If I'm on defense, I realize off the court, I was pretty chill. I was a jokester. If you knew me well enough, I showed love to everybody. On the court, though, I was the one on defense yelling like, boom, 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 boom. Like I was on it. And that to me was like owning my voice through something I really loved and was really passionate about. So debate and basketball in high school were really those critical moments for me. Because debate, it's like, you have to make a clear, concise, critically thought out argument in order to win or lose. But still, that practice was like very early on what got me going. Yeah.
It's interesting that those two activities are seemingly very different in the sense that basketball is so embodied, and you would think debate is purely in the mind. But sounds like what you came into was that actually basketball also has the mind very much involved, and debate has the body as well.
Totally. There were two not so odd, not so distant worlds. It's interesting how it connected.
So since you've been on this journey, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how have you overcome them, if that applies?
Oh my gosh. So right now I teach a class at Oberlin College every week, Intro to Entrepreneurship and Leadership. And I was with my class Monday night, and I remember telling them like, yo, sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes you're only going to have $1 in your bank account. And that's what's real. And I think there've been a number of challenges being an entrepreneur, from choosing the right team to getting through the emotional highs and lows of like when some days are good, and all days are good because we're alive. And some days are freaking hard, yeah. So juggling that balance, I think though, one of the biggest challenges is one that we don't talk about because it's taboo, and that's money, right? Like you have these dreams and you have these resources, and the reality is like, yo, it costs money to produce things unless you have like some endless, resource that like, let me know if you got that.
Yeah, where's that? Yeah.
So I think money resources to power ideas and to really get things off the ground. When you bootstrapped and you know it works, and you're like, okay, well, what's the next level? And in terms of overcoming that, it's been aligning myself with the right people to have the right conversations, and going back to get crystal clear about what it is I'm trying to do, so that when I have a conversation about it, they walk away from that conversation like, got it. I understand what Holley and her team are trying to do. And so now my conversations have completely shifted with like, what are we trying to do with Oratory Glory? It's like, right, we are developing tools and products and learning experiences that inspire better communication. What does that look like? You want to know more? Cool. I can unpack what's under the hood. So that has been like an important part to tackling that challenge in my mind, like shifting my conversations and knowing who I need to be talking to and talking about it, which is, I'm very much a ninja in a lot of ways sometimes. So I find myself in the lab with my team and like coming out, and I'm like, well, people need to hear about what you're doing to be able to help you. And so now, just in terms of like, it's an ongoing thing, but we've been able to set up a lot of meetings now with folks who are interested in investing in the next stage of what we're doing with developing the book and producing more learning experiences and building tools. And that's exciting to be entering a space where it's like, you want to partner with us to help fund the dream. That's cool. But money is a real thing, and it's okay to need it to propel your work, and it's okay to need it to take care of yourself and your family. And I think that, sometimes as entrepreneurs doing work in the social impact space, there's an interesting relationship with money and how we approach it, and like it's like, I can't pay myself. Yes, you can. Please do. Please do.
Yeah.
With your entrepreneurship and residence class, what kind of things have you been noticing that the students have been sharing?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you first about what I'm doing at Oberlin this semester. So I was invited to come work with Oberlin College in Ohio this semester as their entrepreneur in residence. And my role is twofold. One, to teach the Intro to Entrepreneurship course, and two, to support them in developing programming around entrepreneurship to engage students in that path should they seek it. And they have an annual pitch accelerator competition where students learn the business of building a business and can pitch for up to $50,000 to fund a project or an idea. So my work there is to make sure students are applying to Launch You and that they have the support. So I have 26 students in my class, and they're some of the most brilliant minds I've ever got the opportunity to engage with. And there are also students outside of my class who come to the office for office hours. And a lot of them are like, where do I start? And so I think that's the biggest one, the biggest challenge that comes up. Where do I start? And like, what do I do when I have 50 ideas? And I'm like, write them all down. And, it's learning how to prioritize your ideas. So learning where to start, what do I do with all my ideas, and how do I build a team are the three things that have come up the most with the conversations with them. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess no one really teaches us that. You're right. These are excellent questions.
What do you teach them about where to start? I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my biggest strengths on the Strength Finder assessment is futuristic. So I have a tendency to think really big picture of like, here's what this could become at its very best. And then, so I've learned, and I have a team who's really good about getting me to come back to the moment. And so I remind them like, yo, you have this great big idea. And like, where do you start? You start from right here, like from right where you are. I was watching an Oprah interview, and she was like, focus on the next best step. And I was like, yes, Oprah. So I share that with them, and like, you have this big idea. Great. Now, where do you want this idea to go? Okay, great. Now, in order to get there, what do you need to do? And like map out all of those steps and then prioritize those steps. There's a lot of different resources that I give them too, like the Field Guide for Human-Centered Design. Start by interviewing people, asking questions. Like, don't go just build some shit without talking to the people you're building it for. That's not... Don't do that. I mean, you could, but it's the easiest way to fail and get it really, really wrong. I'm like, start at the source. And then in terms of when you have like 50 ideas, I'm like, great, write them all down and focus on the one that's the most tangible right now. I'm a very heart-centered person. So I'm like, yo, do the one that you wake up every day and you're like, yo, something about that idea keeps telling me, come back to it. And don't start 50 ideas at once. You'll drive yourself nuts. I've tried it. It's nuts. I still try it sometimes. It's nuts in a beautiful way sometimes, but one idea at a time, one moment at a time. And don't be afraid to start from scratch. Yeah.
So I actually want to go back a little bit, because I'm curious that you were talking about in New York, there's just that fast pace, that rat race, and you're like, what am I racing for? So I'm wondering what's opened up for you since you've moved out to the Bay Area and made that change. What opportunities, or how have you grown since moving out here?
Wow, 3 years. First, it took me like a year to accept that I had moved to California, because I did this thing where I was like, I want to be bi-coastal. And so I went back home like 6 times the first 6 months that I moved to California. And New York has that draw about it that brings you back. I think I've become a lot more balanced, a lot more chill, which sometimes drives me a little insane. But I think the willingness to just mellow out, spend some time in nature, not be working around the clock. I think that was the biggest shift for me, not working all the time and creating space where I had more room for play. The Bay has done that for me. And then on the second end, there's just a culture here that is very inviting to people who have big vision. Whereas in New York, there's nothing wrong with earning it. I feel like sometimes in New York, though, you got to earn it like 17 people fighting over a steak. And I'm just like, that's a lot. That's really intense. And here it's, you do what? Oh, cool. Let me connect you to. The connections were very much seemingly a little easier to make once I was here. I think, though, a big part of it was like New York groomed me to be like, hey, this is what I'm up to. I'm very clear. This is where I'm trying to go next. And just take things one moment at a time. Living here has helped me get better at taking it one moment at a time, because everybody's so chill all the time. I'm like, okay, if y'all are chilling, then I guess I can just take it a little easier.
How has that felt being an entrepreneur who's trying to chill out a little bit? Because that's obviously one of the deadly traps of entrepreneurship is you could work all the time. And there's this real push if you're listening to people like Gary Vaynerchuk or
Yeah.
any of those guys to say, and you need to work to be successful. And certainly there's an element of truth to that. I'm interested, now that you're a few years into it out here, how has that affected your own attitude towards it?
Tremendously. And I think, don't get me wrong, like there's no substitute for work, for doing the work. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
And you are not just your work. Like you are a human. You need, the social fulfillment. You need the relationship fulfillment. You need the family fulfillment. So for me, it's been a sense of like, how can I be a complete person and do great work? And I got to a point where like work, I wasn't fulfilled anymore. I was like, I really enjoy my work. But then like when I leave and I'm like, who do I call up to say, yo, I had a great day at work? I'm like, no one, because I'm the only one who's still at work like 24 hours later. You know what I mean? So that shift about just like human relationships. And I do think it's incredibly important to work hard and to do hard work. I don't think it's healthy though to be work around the clock. And also, you got to make room for fun. And sometimes when I step away from the work, I realize how much better I am when I come back. I'm like, yo, my ideas are better. I think of great ideas when I'm not working. I'm like, I had some fun. And then I came back to the work and the work is fun too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice, in addition to a lot of the amazing pieces of wisdom that you've given so far, would you like to share with other millennials who are on this journey toward fulfillment and success as well?
Oh, advice. Two pieces, actually. Trust your gut and stay the course. I was reading a Miles Davis quote yesterday on the plane, and he said, when you're creating your own shit, man, even the sky ain't the limit. And sometimes you've got an idea that feels so big and people might not get it and they may look at you like you're a little out of it. Like, stay the course. If your heart is telling you this is right and this feels good, even if it ends in failure, see it through, because there's a lesson to learn from it. And always trust your gut. My intuition has grown so much stronger since I moved to the Bay. I think taking the leap to the Bay in itself was just like a big intuitive kind of thing. Like, yo, this feels right. Because you got your whole life to fail. And why not fail doing things that you really enjoy versus like failing at that desk job that you tell your friends you hate every time you get off work.
Yeah.
There's something to that idea that it's going to take hard work either way, so you might as well work hard at something you care about.
Totally.
Because either way, I mean, but it feels harder because it feels more uncertain.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's always the challenge of doing, quote unquote, the thing you love or the entrepreneurial thing, because it's like, well, I hate this job, but at least this job is a known quantity. If I tried to do that thing I loved, I might fail, I might have to quit. It's like, and then you get another job you hate. So it's like, you know, what you truly, and obviously there are,
there are plenty jobs to love. Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I just, in the space that I'm in right now in my life, and I mean, growing up, I thought I was going to have like a 9-to-5 job until I was in one. And I was like, nah, this actually isn't what I want to do with the rest of my life. And that's fine if that's the path for you and that's what you really want. For me, though, I was just like, I'm going all in on this. And if it doesn't work out, life will go on. I'll figure out what's next. But for me in this very moment right now, this is the path that I'm on. This Oratory Glory train is where it's at. And I really believe in the capacity of it to help change the world. So I'm like, yo, let's do it on a global scale.
Yeah, and there's nothing that can really replace that feeling that's coming from you right now as you're talking about how excited
I'm leaning
you
over
are.
the desk.
Yeah, like there's nothing that can replace that. And once you start on that path and really feel that and embody it, it's like, okay, more of this, please.
It's like a drug, for real.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like more of that. Yeah,
I hear that.
more of that, please.
Yeah.
So in addition to the Miles Davis quote, is there a book that you found particularly motivational or that you would recommend to people?
Totally. Oh my gosh. One, read books. Read a lot of books. Books are amazing. I grew up in the library. They help you, your communication. They help you with language. They help your writing. Two that come to mind are, one, The Alchemist. And I know that's like the, I guess, cheesy one to use, but it's a classic story of a boy who follows his dream. And it's like, he goes through some challenges, man. Like, you never been in a desert, so you can make this happen. Like, you can pursue this dream. But The Alchemist for sure, and Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. It's a book on just the art of stoicism. And it's like the timeless art of turning trials into triumphs. And that is like a great read for me, because it's like, hey, yeah, I know it's going to get tough, and do the work anyway. Because anything tough it's usually worth it in the end if you really believe in it enough. So those 2 books for sure.
I like the way you've been yes-anding a lot through the conversation as well.
Yeah. Read books. Read tons of books. Please read books.
That's great.
So what is your morning routine like on a day that's going to like set you up for a super amazing day?
Morning routine. My mornings differ based on if I'm here in the Bay or if I'm traveling for work. I do a lot of traveling. So if I'm here in the Bay, I wake up at 6:30 every morning. Also go to bed. I go to bed between 10:30 and 11:30. I do my best to. But prayer and meditation and gratitude are all really important parts of my practice. So I start my morning with that. I make sure that I don't pick up my phone. I don't check the internet. I don't check a tweet, of Instagram, any of those things until after that practice. Because if I do, then I'm reactive for the rest of the day. I'm just like responding to stuff. So I start with a prayer routine in the morning. I set my intentions for the day. I make myself breakfast. And over breakfast, there's like an estuary right around the corner from my house. So I go sit there and I read and I journal. And that's like my morning. And then not until I'm done with that, like the self-care, I take care of myself and then I start my work. And so I usually check in with my COO, Holley, first, and I see like what we have going, like what's on deck for the day. I check my calendar where I keep my to-dos instead of like keeping a massive to-do list. I just put a task in the specific day I need to get it done. And I do my best to like break for meals. Like feeding myself is important. So I'll work till about 12-ish, take a break for a bite. I love to cook for myself. I think that's love. Cooking for yourself is loving yourself. So I'll cook for myself, get back to work and answer some emails or calls. If I'm working from home or Zoo Labs, I'm doing that. And then sometimes I'm taking meetings or going to coach or going to teach. And I'm doing my best now these days to wrap my day up by sunset. Once the sun sets, I'm like, we are done for the day, because it's so easy to just stay at my computer till midnight because I'm so excited about what we're doing. And then there are times where we have to put things in overdrive. So we'll have like a teamwork session to prototype an idea. So it varies. When I'm traveling, it's a lot harder to keep that routine. I'm like cooking for myself and like, especially going back and forth to Oberlin every week. So when I'm on the road, I usually get in, I have like a travel kind of kit that I keep with me of my vitamins, of like my intentions that I keep with me so I can set up and like meditate and pray where I am. And this whatever I'm doing when I'm traveling. So I get booked to do things like moderate summits and festivals, which has been really exciting and fun to do. I love to hold space and facilitate things where I'm going to teach at Oberlin. Sometimes I'll be doing a training with my team for a different corporate company that we're working with. So it runs, it's a mix of things. But always starts with a routine of like, take care of yourself so that you can do your best work. And that's my routine right now. These days, that's the routine.
So this has been a really amazing interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, will you share with the audience where they can find out more about you and your work?
Absolutely. OratoryGlory.com is the place to go if you are a creative, an entrepreneur, you're adding great value to the world, and you want to learn how to powerfully own your voice to change the game. HolleyMurchison.com is my personal website, so you can learn more about what I'm up to and my personal endeavors with Hall Pass Tour or with Oratory Glory. And hallpasstour.com, you can visit that site and see what we're up to as we dismantle the model and reissue it to the world at some point next year. And I'm on social media too. So Twitter at Holley Murchison. You can also find me on Instagram at Holley M. Murchison. And Instagram's my jam. I love Instagram. Instagram's so much fun.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Workshops. Whether your desire is to connect with other millennials or to provide personal or professional development opportunities to your community, our workshops are customized for your needs. Visit motivationalmillennial.com/workshops to learn more. Welcome to the after show of our conversation with Holley Murchison. Had a very nice time kicking it with her and talking all things entrepreneurship and creativity.
Yeah.
One of the things I really appreciated that she said was talking about the taboo subject of money and how important it is to do that, especially with the entrepreneurial students that she teaches. And as I was reflecting on it, it made me think of my own business journey, because I've had a lot of different experiences with money and I really just rolled with them. I didn't have a whole lot of official business training. In fact, I had zero business training in college. It was all experiential, getting out in the real world when I accidentally started working in the music industry. And so I think for people who are listening to this and having some journey with money, I think we all have different stories we tell ourselves about money. So it's important to be aware of them. But I guess if I had to say one overarching thing, it would be there's a lot of information out there about how you should start a business or how you should think about money. And some of it says things like you should get outside funding, because that way you'll be able to build and scale your business. Or you should never get outside funding, because then you'll be indebted to people and they'll have a say in your business and you'll have to be pushed to sell it. Some people say, never start a business. It's a partnership, because inevitably you'll have conflict and then you'll have money issues. Or you should always start a business as a partnership, because you shouldn't be trying to rely only on your own vision and direction. So there's all this competing advice out there, and I've seen a fair amount of it firsthand. I've been in a music industry business, which was the music production and artist management company I ran while I was in England, and that was really bootstrapped. I self-funded it with my savings. We ended up making money from the songs and then from touring and then from licensing and radio royalties and all those kind of things. But it was really challenging because every month was kind of on the line. But on the flip side, we had total control of all of our projects. And I've also been part of an organization that developed large-scale funding through partnerships with corporations, which was great because, they had established budgets. They wanted to give you money for these programs. And so you were providing a service that fit their marketing needs, and they were giving you money, which helped you keep running. And then I've also been part of an organization that looked to outside investment. And on one hand, what an incredible gift and opportunity. But on the flip side, timing really becomes an issue. Is the money going to come in time to keep everything you've started to build running? And the big takeaway for me is there is no single right answer, but I think it's really important to get clear on what you want for you and what you're comfortable with. Because some people are going to look at the business and say, you know what, I can eat beans and rice and sell my car and bike around and, live in a house with a bunch of other people, and I'm willing to do that for my dream. And another person's going to say, you know what, I would rather work a standard job and build my business on nights and weekends until it's so revenue positive that I feel comfortable leaving my job. And there's no right answer for any of these questions, but it's what is your personal comfort level and what do you really want for your business?
I definitely agree with you. And I also think that the other perspective or another way of looking at money is not just what particular strategy that you feel most comfortable implementing, but also what your relationship with money is like. And I think that in our culture, and in a lot of cultures, but in our culture, it's like money is seen simultaneously as something that we really want, but also something that we really resent when people have it. And in reality, money is something that we need. Money is really important. And I think that when Holley's talking about it being a taboo subject, I think that that can be an issue when you're into nonprofit work or social entrepreneurship and that sort of thing, because your goal is making a positive impact on the world in whatever way that is. Your goal isn't just, making money, but the reality is that you have to be oriented on making money so that you can continue to make that positive impact on the world. And so one of the things that I've been exposed to again recently, and actually I need to read this book, The Soul of Money, because it keeps coming up in my life, but that book is all about essentially that money is a type of energy, and it's something that brings life and experiences and food and shelter and all of these really wonderful things. And so one of the ways that can be really helpful in dealing with money issues is reorienting the way that you view money in general, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think you're right. The story we also tell ourselves about money coming from a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset also makes a difference in what type of energy we are projecting into the world. Are we coming at it from a place of grasping and needing and craving, or are we coming at it from a place of peace and calm and abundance? And I think we all feel it when we're interacting with somebody who you just get the sense, wow, like they're just really trying to sell me on something. We can feel that. We might not always be able to articulate it, but it's interesting versus someone who has the confidence and at least the projected certainty to say, here's what I'm offering. I believe it will help you. And if this is for you, I would love to share this with you. If it's not, that's totally fine. Because then it truly feels like a choice. And I feel, at least for me, that sales tactic or technique is really appealing. And I think for many people, it comes across as very authentic. And it's not, I say, a sales tactic. It's not just a sales tactic. It's an orientation in the world. And Seth Godin talks really beautifully about this. He says, you're going to make something through your business, through your work, and it's going to be for some people, and it's not going to be for other people. And the key to recognizing that is asking, who is this for? And for people who don't want it or don't get it, that's fine. You say, thank you so much. I understand. This is not for you. Have a wonderful day. And allowing ourselves to think not everyone has to buy our thing or has to be interested in our thing is actually more freeing, because then it lets us really focus on the people who do truly want it and who already see the value. And so now we're just trying to match whatever we have to offer with what people want versus trying to convince people that they actually want this thing.
Well, I think part of the, like you said, part of the convincing is coming from a scarcity mindset, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be totally broke. But part of it is a validation of your value, that everything you've been working on or creating, or if the product happens to be yourself, that you are valuable. And I think one of the things that can be really challenging for people who are trying to sell themselves, like build a client base, or say that I provide this service for this fee. The fee is really a value exchange. How much value are you providing? And then, being compensated for that value in the form of monetary financial energy, right? It's a shift. This person is receiving your intellectual service or whatever it happens to be, but not being afraid to ask for money is what I'm getting at. Not being afraid to ask for the value that you know that you're giving, because sometimes it can feel so wonky and uncomfortable to say this is my rate or this is my fee, because we feel guilty about wanting money because we have this weird relationship with money, and not seeing it as like, this is just an exchange of different types of value. Not, I'm being greedy and trying to just trick you into giving you me your money, if you know what I mean.
Especially in artistic fields, especially in nonprofit world.
Yeah.
In all these areas where it's either a service or it's creative or it's less tangible. I think sometimes there's an implicit devaluing of the creative work because it's not some physical necessity or tangible good. But if you think about it, ironically, it's those intangible, unnecessary goods that command the highest prices. You think about paintings that go for millions and millions of dollars. No one needs those paintings, but it's because there's a certain story we attach to the value of them or the scarcity. And it's true for so many things, so many luxury goods or incredibly expensive things. It's about quality for sure. That's a certain part, but a lot of it's about the story and that story of exclusivity or craftsmanship or whatever that story is. And so I think telling ourselves a story about our own worth and value is really important. I would love to hear what else you got out of the conversation with Holley.
It was so funny. It was actually just like the tiniest thing out of the whole, but for some reason it stood out to me because I think it's really resonating for what my journey has been like lately. And it was when she was talking about the type of advice that she gives to her students around how to choose from a list of 50 million ideas. And what she said that she tells them is picking the one that is most tangible right now. And she said that she was really heart-centered. So like for her, that means it's the idea that when you wake up in the morning, you are really excited about doing and pursuing. And that's something that I've come to lately because, I mean, very similar to what you're saying about the financial situation. When you go and you start doing your own work, particularly for a living, you can read a multitude of perspectives of this is the best way and this is the right path and this is the exact way to do it. And I think that the answer is that there are many paths to creating whatever you want to create. Like there are a multitude of them. And so that's why when you have a list of 50 ideas that could work, in trying to find the perfect one, sometimes you can get like overwhelmed by the fact that there's 50 and I should be doing all 50. Like I should be doing all of them right now. Like why am I not like just this giant organization doing all 50 immediately? And then you can spin your wheels and do nothing, right? So I've been trying to think of different like marketing ideas to really connect with motivational millennial audience members if you're listening outside of the podcast. And so I've been thinking of ways that really resonate with me. And for me, it's workshops. Like being in person with people is really important to me. Doing, eventually more blog posts and writing. There are a multitude of marketing tools. But what are, out of this vast list of marketing tools, what are the ones that I'm going to be consistently really excited about? And the reason I think that that's important is because, one, I'm going to be much more likely to execute that idea because I really am excited about it and care about it. And two, the authenticity, like you were talking about, is there. The authenticity is there because I'm really excited to be doing this workshop because I love doing workshops. And for me, that's the most important thing in this work is being authentic and genuine and present because, gosh, those are some of the rarest types of relationships that we have, honestly, is authentic relationships. And so all that to say, it's like that little phrase where she said that I'm heart-centered and I picked the thing that, I'm most excited about doing just really resonated with me because it's where I've been leaning, recently. And that way those things are going to happen and there's going to be more authentic power and love behind each of those actions. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't things that when you go out on your, and you're building a company, like things that you don't want to do that you have to do, administrative stuff. And like, there's things that you're going to have to, like Elizabeth Gilbert says, eating shit sandwiches, and whatever thing that you pursue, like there's always going to be that. But I just think if you have this whole list of ideas, what is calling you the most? Because that's going to be what gets the momentum going.
Right. And it's about choosing one at a time to pursue, which I think is hard for people like us who have lots of ideas continuously.
Yeah, like even when you said that just now, I was like, what? I want to do 5 things after my 50. I only picked 5, like it's true.
Yeah. And I know when you say marketing options, also, it's really that the marketing is kind of built into the experience, because if you're holding a workshop on, say, self-compassion and people are having transformations in the workshop, then the marketing is done through the process, which is sort of the most authentic type of marketing.
Yes.
Because then you're not trying to convince anybody, they just experience.
No, it's like how to build community in a way that people are really getting value and are just like, wow, I really like the types of people that come together around motivational millennial events, and I really like how I feel, and that's the goal,
I think that sense of community is what people are really seeking a lot of the times too, is looking for people who share their values, who share their interests, who share their beliefs. And one of the most powerful things I've been a part of is people who convene events where everyone gets together who share these values. I'm thinking of things like Rock the Stage, which Josh Shipp runs for youth motivational speakers. Mm-hmm. And you go there and the energy is electric. There's a lot of specific things for motivational speakers, but also it's a great place to meet people who share a similar worldview. And I think of like our friend Jenny Sauer-Klein, who's done things with facilitators and acro yoga and entrepreneurs. And so we get around those people who are creative and entrepreneurial and very open and expressive. And so I've seen the power in that. And I agree. I think we both share that vision for Motivational Millennial to be that place where we are able to bring people together through the podcast, through workshops, through retreats, through all of these different types of in-person and online experiences where people with these shared values can come together.
Yeah, and the point is that that's what, of all of our hundreds of ideas that we could be doing and creating, that's what really resonates with us the most, and that's really where our heart is calling us. And so that being the main, takeaway for people is finding out what is going to keep calling you to do that and create it. And when you do it, even if you're nervous, then afterward you're like, whoa, that was the best thing ever. Like, I can't believe I did that. And you get even more energy to continue doing it. When you find that thing, that's what you need to keep doing.
I love it. That's a great place to end up. So we hope one of the things you keep doing is listening to the Motivational Millennial podcast. Hey, transition game strong. So we hope you tune in next week for another wonderful conversation, and that you keep it real, Motivational Millennials. For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!